What if I tell you you can stack 10 units on one rearguard right now? What's up? Welcome to our channel Overtriggered. Today we are going over the possible Nirvana builds, which are currently only two, and they are either the tempo build or the prayer build, and what kind of differences there are in these different builds, how do you play them, and I will give you a quick roundup about everything. And of course I will show you my deck list. I prepared some. First, the tempo build, if you just want to check up some ratios, how I played it, or if you're just here to do a quick net deck. And here is the prayer build, which is my personal favorite of these two builds, and I will explain why. The tempo build is the more traditional build in terms of what we played in the last sets, and the prayer build is like the new crazy evolution where you just hyper librarian your deck and you just go full ham. And the tempo one is like, yeah, like we know it, you push slowly every turn and keeping up the tempo. And with the prayers build you have a really strong grade 3 and a really strong grade 4 turn, and then you push, and yeah, you can win there easily, but it can also go to turn 5, but you will stay strong. The general idea behind the tempo build is that you can put early aggression very heavily with your Erga and with your Varina, since they are 20k base on the tech, at least the standard Varina, and you can create once the Vanguard with 10 or actually 12 on swing, and then you have two other rear guards which are 20 each, so that means even if your opponent checks a defensive you will still get over it. And if you don't want to put early aggression, it's depending on the matchup, you can just go for an Arx or just a Varina and just swing with that to face. So you can put up a more tempo-ish playstyle where you swing each turn, and yeah, on your grade 2 turn just 2 times or 3 times, and apply a lot of pressure. It's a good mid-range deck. That means on your second, third and fourth turn you will get a lot of pressure, but then it falls off in the late game, since you will not get out of resources per se, but you will see that your resources in terms of Soul Blast mostly will fall off then, and you will not be able to apply that much pressure anymore. Now I will go over the ratios, since they are not fixated or something like in this deck. There is a lot of variation, but this is my personal opinion on this deck. I like to play only two Asperaridias, or whatchamacallit, cause you don't want to draw it as much in the early game. You only want to draw it in the late game on your G4 turn, and I don't play any Persona rides. There are some builds where they play like 1 to 2 more of the Persona rides and cut some of the Nirvana G4, but in my opinion the Nirvana is really better right now in the matchup, especially when in this tempo build you play 4 Trixas in the main deck, so there is the possibility that you can draw them. But keep in mind that your Nirvana can only call with a counterblast and with soul blasting or discarding a Nirvana. So that means you won't get a Trickster from the drop that easily. In my opinion, the G4 is much better. Right after the G3 turn, you want to go on your G4 to ping your opponent for a damage, applying even more pressure and tempoing them out of the game. I like to run 3 standard Varina and 2 Ergas. You can switch them up, you can play 2 Varinas and 3 Ergas. The reason behind this high number of these units is if you wanna go early aggression, or if you have the pieces in hand to do it. Erga is a 20k and a 15k shield at the same time. The standard Varina is like the same, in only in the Bruce matchup you maybe want to pop something with the Varina skill, but be careful with the soul. I personally never like to use Erga's effect, since you will get out of soul when you're on your G3 turn and you ride over your Nirvana. you have already Soul Blasted 1 for the Rayo skill when you ride on your Nirvana on the grade 3. And then if you ride over it to Mahar Nirvana, you only have the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, so that's 3 soul. Then you Soul Blast 1 for the Nirvana skill, except you have another Nirvana in your hand. Then you have only 2 soul left. So if you use Erga once, you don't have any soul more left for Esperidea, or yeah, that's mostly the only thing you will use it, let's be honest. You won't use Verena skill very often, actually like none of the time, except for the Bruce matchup. And there's the reason why some people like to play the Persona Ride. It gives you another soul. And if you are a player which likes to reserve the Erga skills and you're running into some counterblast issues and you want to use Erga on your G3 turn, you could consider riding Persona Rides, or consider running Togashirashi back into the deck and cut out like Xymena and cut down another standard Varina or even the Valiente. Since my build focuses more on the G4 Varina, G4 Nirvana, I like to play the new grade 1 recycler from the drop, since if you can counterblast one and you're on G4, you can also countercharge immediately. So that's a nice recycler, especially if you need some pieces like you have you have overdressed arcs, drew 2, drew 1 of them, and you would like to have Expecta in hand. You can place Retsu G, the Blaze Fist Monk grade 1, and overdress. I like to play one of Xymena, but it's also totally okay to cut it out, like I said, for like Togashirashi and one Valiente out for another Togashirashi, so you have some soul. The mulligan varies between the matchups. If you're playing against a new G4 deck which can't aggro earlier or suffers from early aggression, like Loro or for example Bruce, then I would mulligan for the aggro playstyle, like want Verena in hand, you want an Erga in hand, and a second Trickster, since you will only call one with your G1 skill. So you can swing 3 times to face. If you're playing against the new Sarah Snow, which you will be for sure playing against, then I would keep up with the tempo build, since Sarah Snow is the worst matchup for this deck. Doesn't matter which build, since it steals you the soul, it steals you the overdress unit, it steals your hand, it steals everything, like stealing your real life for real. So in that case, you would aim more for an arcs to gain hand advantage, resolving arcs a lot more than in other matchups, and you would go for an possible Expecta, since Expecta puts the cards back to drop, so Sarah Snow only steals 1 from the field. That's very important. Expecta is a good card in that in the prison matchup, and against other matchups like Gravidia or Retire matchups, just keep your field relatively low, call one overdress unit and the other casually non-overdress to that it gains also the extra power from the G3 Nirvana or G4 Nirvana, and swing with that and do like a beatdown. Then your deck transforms like into a more beatdown version, and once you have enough overdress units in your drop, you can use your Esperidea Barbara and attach all of the units back to your overdress stuff. Overdress, yeah, just put it beneath Esperidea and you will get a lot of power, but keep in mind you need the soul to restand, so soul management is the key in this deck. Alright, now we go to my favorite build of this deck. Totally not biased, but I just think it's the more fun to play and the little bit better, but also totally different to pilot. Like, it's not like the tempo build, it's really like a different deck it would seem. And so go over some facts. The prayer build is really strong on your turn 3 when you ride on your Nirvana from the right deck, and super strong on your turn 4. On your turn 5, depends on which matchups. If you're playing against Prison, it's gonna get hard for sure, but you have to play around that. But in other matchups, if they can't retire your Esperidea, then you're in a pretty good spot. Only downside on that deck is that you don't have an early aggression, so you really want to go first with that deck, that you will be on your G3 turn as soon as you can, and don't worry about the Trickster as a grade 0 in your right line. You want to go first, so it doesn't even matter, but when you go second, the one less cards doesn't hurt you that much. You just have to mulligan right, and we will come to that later. So the reason behind the Trickster in the right line is that you want to have a Trickster in your drop, and you don't want to draw into a Trickster. If you draw into one, that is fine, don't discard it, it can't come in handy. If you didn't saw my set 3 prayer build, I will show you the real quick combo right here on the table with my cards, so you can understand how I play it and the idea behind it. So we are on our grade 2 turn. We called it and called the Trickster from the deck. Then on the next turn, we will ride Nirvana and use a skill to Soul Blast one and search as Virena, which is pretty important. You want to have at least one in hand for this turn. The most important card in this deck is of course Prayers. We play it as a 4-off because we want to draw it, and that's the centerpiece. There are some builds which only play 3, and you can change the ratios, but we will go over that later how this works. So we have a prayer, and on our grade 3 turn we want to use prayer, give our Vanguard the skill that it can you can draw a card every time you overdress, and your Vanguard gets plus 5k, which also means your Vanguard swing will be pretty huge, and you don't want to use your Nirvana skill when you swing. You will see after this turn why. So we will keep it like here so we don't forget it. We got one Trickster here, since we didn't overdress, cause you need it in this turn, since you want to combine it with the prayer build, with the prayer order. Best case, you want to overdress into an Arcs. So you just draw 2 cards. I will just not draw it just for demonstration. In the optimal case, you have one standard Virena, so you can use the skill of Nirvana, discard something, call the Trickster, get a Virena out, get a Valiente here and Expecta here, and if you have any left Expectas or Valientes, you can put them over here. But there is a case where you don't have a grade 2 to overdress first. And the thing is, if you are on your grade 3s already in the overdress state, the grade 2s like Trickster and Virena don't do much, and you want to avoid that. If you don't have any discard fodders in your hand at the moment, you can keep overdressing on one side, on one Trickster and Virenas, till you get a discard fodder. So you are not bound to discard immediately at the start of the turn to get your Trickster. So keep that in mind. Overdress on one side if you're not happy with overdressing on the other side, depending on what you have in your hand. So for example, I put the Arcs over there, drew a bunch of stuff, but do not have a Virena right now or whatever, and not enough cards. I can just keep overdressing here, a Valiente, draw another card, Expecta, let's see to see what you will be drawing, and after that you can call down the Trickster, call the Virena like here, and even in the worst case like this board would also be fine. So you have your Esperidea fueled for the next turn. Now prepping for the next turn, you want to have one Expecta at least on one side. It is possible to play one Expecta on this side and one Valiente on this side. Since Valiente is like one form of an Expecta, it can do 2 damage cause it restands, but you have to discard a card for that. But the important part about Valiente is you only counterblast when it hits, and your opponent won't let you hit it, since you will stand Valiente then. With Expecta it's a different thing. You counterblast first, it gets the power and it gets the pressure, it gets the crit, and sorry, my girlfriend just screamed. Where were we? Yeah, Expecta gets the crit and gets the power, but your opponent will guard it either way. So If you are attacking with Expecta and you counterblast for the skill, your opponent will guard it. You swing with your Valiente, your opponent will guard it, but you don't use the counterblast immediately, only when it hits. So that's the plus point for Valiente, which means if we have a field like this, you can use Expecta skill, it loses the overdress units. That means you want to, best case, get rid of your Expecta next turn, or something like that, to fuel your Esperidias as much as possible. Best case scenario would be if you can overdress this part, like putting Varina and then Valiente and 3 more Expectas on top of it, so it looks something like that, since it will be at a crazy amount of power and a PG for sure, or it will just hit, it doesn't matter. What matters is that as many units as possible are going into drop or overdress units and tricksters. Another important part is if you have more than 2 grade 2 units in your hand, discard them for riding. Especially if you have 2 arcs or something like that, you only need 1 arc. 2 arcs is too much, you don't have the counterblast. This deck is very counterblast heavy, and you want to have 1 Varina in hand, and that you will get with your grade 3 Nirvana Search. And you want to have an arcs in hand to get more hand, since you don't play the starter, the standard starter. Arcs helps that to avoid bricking. We are now in our 4th turn. We can ride Mahar Nirvana. And we are at this point where we have one Esperaridia, and we want to use it. We want to boost him up, and what we do now is remove the order since it was from the last turn, and use Mahar Nirvana as an effect, counterblast 1, Soul Blast, or discard the Nirvana from your hand, and call a Trickster. And important here is to call it over the Expecta. The Expecta is not doing anything right now, since you don't, it can't boost. There's no reason to keep it on the field. It's just another fuel for our Esperarid.
Oh shit.
Esperaridia. So in this case we get 1 unit more. And if we have a good hand, we will get like 6 overdress units beneath it. That means when it stands, it will get 30k, since every unit gives 5k when it restands. So in this case, attacking first with 23, attacking with Mahar Nirvana, doing your checks, restanding it for a Soul Blast, and it gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 5k, so it will be on 53k on attack. And I said before, if you draw on your second Trickster in the main deck, keep it in hand. Reason behind it is, if you drew a second Esperaridia and you have another Trickster in your hand, you can call the Trickster over your Valiente, as dumb as it seems, after you have wrote the first Esperaridia, and call your Esperaridia here and get these 3 units beneath it, so it will be on plus 20 on restand. And on that turn you would lose your whole soul, but you're attacking 5 times with huge numbers, and if that's a really rare chance that this will happen, but it could happen technically, and it will happen. On your next turn, your Esperaridias can't restand anymore since you don't have any soul. Technically you could call over another Mahar Nirvana, then you have another soul, you won't use the skill since you have your strong Esperaridias, which you want to guard, you want to keep them. But if you don't have a soul and you have another Expecta, that's why we play 4 of them, you could technically ride with Expecta over it. So this will be like a huge amount of number when it swings. You don't even need to use a skill at this moment since you want to keep the power all the time, and that's a possibility. That's why you have to manage a good count of your different Varina cards you have, since you will get almost through all of them on your grade 3 turn with the Prayas build. Okay, let's get over the ratios real quick, since they're pretty easy. I play 1 tricks in the right line, 2 in the main deck. As we've seen before, you want to call out one with the Rhino skill, and you have the second one to potentially draw it to play a second Esperaridia, or if it gets to damage zone, you still have one in the deck, and it happened to me. Trust me, you want that second one for sure. We don't play a fourth one. You could play it technically if you like to play it. I personally don't like it, not because of the consistency, but more of the prayer build or the prayer card, since the prayer card lets you draw a lot of cards and you want to draw the overdress units. You want to draw Expecta and Valiente mostly. I play 3 Esperaridia, some play 2. In my opinion, playing only 2, I didn't saw it that consistently, since in the mulligan you want to mulligan for prayers and an arcs, and that's it, since you will draw the rest of them. If you have a Expecta additionally, that's fine, but if you don't have prayers, I would mulligan everything back. Nirvana I would maybe keep, but you will draw also into it on your G3 turn if you have a lot of overdress units. So that is the key behind it, and playing 3 ensures that you will draw at least one on your prayer turn, and in the early game, if you have already one in hand or 2 even, just discard one. No, there's no problem, since all overdress units in the drop will be used later on your grade 4 turn. Then of course for Nirvana, that's the unit we aim for to be our vanguard. For Expecta, as I said, this is the most essential unit in this build. Then the Valiente is nice to have, but only a free off, since we play 2 Varinas to ensure that we can search one if one goes to the damage zone or we draw one. And 4 Arcs, since Arcs just gives you more cards in hand, and that's totally fine. Yeah, 4 PGs, pretty standard. The 4 prayers, which could technically be cut down to 3. Some people do that, since after the first prayer play, all the other prayers are useless. So technically you could play 3, but I don't like to lack that kind of consistency, since it's for me very important to go all out on your grade 3 turn with prayer, and I just need one to have, and if I have additional ones I can discard it at the beginning to ride, or use for the Nirvana skill for the grade 3 to discard one and call my Trickster. Talking about mulligan real quick, you really want to have prayers first, then you want to have an arcs. Prayers is much more Valorant, since you can draw into arcs with the prayers. As long as you have overdress units and 1 Varina you will get from the search, and then like Valiente into Expecta or something like that, there is a good chance that you will draw into your arcs, and then after that you call down, from your drop your second Trickster, do an arcs and draw even more cards, which gets you even more cards. Going over the trigger lineup, they are the same in both decks. You could technically switch them up, but I don't recommend to, especially not in the prayer build. You want the draw triggers to get the pieces. The more draw triggers you get earlier, the better. Same with crit. If you crit your opponent, it's really strong, and draw triggers just helps you to replenish your hand and do more prayer stuff. Okay, that's it for the deck profile. I will state my opinion real quick. If you're interested, I will do it either way, so I don't really care, but you can turn off now if you were just here for the information stuff and on my ideas and my opinions on the playstyle and something. My opinion on the deck set right now is pretty good. I really enjoy the prayer build. It does a lot of fun. Like on set 3 I almost didn't play Nirvana stuff. And that's my favorite deck, that's my main deck. I waste too much money on the deck, really. I shouldn't, but I just do, since I love the deck. And the prayer build seems very consistent. It is a lot of fun if you have Expecta or Esperaridia with like 6 units beneath it and swinging it with like a number, like 96k double crit or something. So I really enjoy it. The tempo build I really not enjoy it, since the Urga is just a beefy shield or something like that. You have to really play around your soul management. You fall off in the late game. I personally don't like that playstyle that much, but I think it's more of the playstyle thing, not even saying that it's too far behind the prayers build. Maybe I'm a little bit biased here, But overall, as a deck right now, not counting the meta and everything, is really fine. It's like a strong deck, fun to play. It's not like a half-broken piece of Zorga or something like that, since Zorga has a lot of troubles, but I will come up with the deck list someday, but I have to test like almost 10 different builds, I'm not kidding. I have a lot of ideas for Zorga, since it's also one of my favorite decks, but not talking about that right now. Talking about Nirvana in the whole meta state right now, in my opinion, it's a tier 1.5, not a tier 1. JP just plays it a lot since it's the main character, I think. That was the reasoning behind the various Nirvana tops in the past. Right now it for sure got better, but if I'm thinking about the matchups, like Sarah Snow fucks you like in all different ways, not even imaginable for everybody. Like it's not fair. If you are second, it will steal your soul, your 2 soul, which you really need, and it steals your overdress units, and you have to play on all expectors, and you can't use arcs since you need to use expector that your overdress unit will get into drop, and one pure light won't get the prison player to like 15 soul or something. So it's a tough matchup to play. You have to play around it, then it works, but it's a really hard matchup. And against other matchups like Magnolia, it's fine, it's very balanced out, very evened out. Against something like Bruce, yeah, you have to survive. Yeah, you just have to survive the final flush turn. But with the Prayers build, you will get a lot of hand since you recycle all of your overdress units with triggers and PGs and stuff. Since you will just call over it anyway, so it recycles your cycle for your deck. Yeah, Bastion is like not the best deck. Gravidia could be technically a hard matchup, since you need to push very early and your Esperidias will suffer. In that matchup I see the tempo build, since you have the recycling option with the Rejutsu. And the tempo is generally a little bit stronger against Gravidia, since in the early turns, depending if you're second or first, it can hurt Gravidia to apply some pressure, so that works out. Alright, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile, and I hope it provides you with the information you need for set 4 to build a good Nirvana list. As I said, take my list as references, not as exact decks how you should play them with the same ratios. Take them as references, and if you just wanna test out Nirvana real quick and watch this video and you're thinking, hey, it's looking cool with the combos, you like to overdress like 10 units on, on one circle, just go over at the start where I showed, or in the description down below there will be the deck codes for the different decks, and just copy paste it, play a little bit, see how you feel with the deck, how comfortable you are with the other builds, and if you have any troubles on ratios or something, just change them. Don't take my list for granted. I will play a lot for sure now in the set 4, since we will be stuck a little bit here till set 5. It will be like 3 to 4 months, so don't think the list will change too much, but these are just guidelines. That's what I want to say. Talk it over, Triggered.